This week on Dig Me Out.
I can't stand it. I can't stand it. So give me coffee and TV. We're together now. Can you hear the dolphins cry? See the road rise up to me.
With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode by joining at patreon.com/digmeout. Jay, it's that time, Roundtable time.
Here we go, another year.
This is the last of our 20-year retrospectives. The next time we do this, it'll be a 30-year retrospective because we're going to go back to 1990 in
That's
2020.
True. Wow, that's depressing.
Yeah.
It's exciting and depressing.
Shocking was the word I was going to use.
Shocking.
That works.
Are you
Eric,
gobsmacked?
You got anything?
No.
You got any adjectives? No.
No, I
he's
don't.
just contemplating.
It's
like-
just math. You expected that to happen.
Right.
No, it's just that whole thing about like time moves by very quickly. No, the Righteous Brothers weren't correct. Time moves by very quickly, and it's just more a matter of, hey, while you're enjoying all this music, time is flying by.
Exactly.
Think about
And
it.
all this music, unlike pre-digital, it's available all the time everywhere. You know, it used to be
Right.
you had to like go to your record store and dig a record out, and maybe you'd find something interesting, and or somebody would recommend something. Now everything is available at all times everywhere thanks to streaming, and makes things a lot different in terms of consuming music. So, I don't know, were they doing 30-year retrospectives back in 1990 for 1960? Maybe Rolling Stone was. That might have been about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, they were still talking about how great 1967 was.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh wait, they're still talking about that.
We need to introduce our roundtable guests. They've been here before multiple times. You can check out their guest pages over at digmeoutpodcast.com to see all the episodes they have joined us for, as well as links to their various activities. Eric Grubbs, Joe Royland, welcome back to the show, both of you.
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
Hello.
Good. 1999. That's the year we're talking about. Lots of chatter over at Patreon about this year. And as we were discussing in the pre-show, this is a weird year. This is the year of, say, Britney Spears selling 10 million copies of her debut album. This is the year of Limp Bizkit. This
Wow.
is the year of Smooth by Rob Thomas and Santana. This is the year that Napster is launched. So you could say that this is maybe one of the most important years in the history of music because of that. Because of file sharing changing the landscape completely for music in the 21st century. So we're going to talk about probably not Britney Spears. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll talk about Gary Sharon leaving Van Halen. I don't know. That could come up.
Where's Matt Wardlaw to back me up on this?
Maybe we could talk about Korn. Maybe we just need to do a whole. Maybe it's time, Jay. We do a new metal genre dissection episode.
Yeah.
I'd be up for it.
Yeah.
If our patrons decide, they could vote for that.
It looks like our
Yes.
first patron-selected roundtable is going to be a genre dissection, like we've done in the past with episodes such as our Power Pop roundtable last year, or emo, shoegaze, punk. We've done a number of these. Maybe it's time we tackle new metal.
This is the year for it. That's for sure.
Well,
This is definitely yes.
We're obliged to do it at some point. So
We are. Need to talk about over at Patreon before we get to those comments. Got some people who have joined us. At the $2 level, we had David Haverland, and I'm going to mess up your name. I apologize. Vili Olenicki. I think that's right.
That's pretty good.
I think
that's pretty good.
Yeah. And then we need to thank Darren Leach, who jumped from 250 to 1950, joining us. He's becoming a member of our board of directors. He's going to be helping us on the roundtables. He's going to be helping us on 80s, our bi-monthly 80s episodes that are going to be coming up this year. Woo! Thank you, Darren. Enjoy the roundtable discussions. Enjoy the 80s discussions. If you'd like to do so, other folks, patreon.com/digmeout. So, here's what we're going to do. I want to bring up these comments as we're going through. I don't want to just load up all the comments at the top of the show because we'll be talking about the comments from people. So let's do our first category of albums, and let's talk about albums that came out in 1999 that you think have stood the test of time. Now, these don't have to be your favorite albums of that year, but just albums you go, yep, that is a really solid album that has re-listen value 20 years later. People should check it out. Eric, let me start with you. Give me your 2 or 3 top albums that you think have stood the test of time from 1999.
Sure. I'm not going to talk about what my favorite album of 99 is yet, but
save that for the end.
Yes. So what I'm going to say is I have 4, and I'll just quickly run over them.
Okay.
Something to Write Home About by the Get Up Kids. 1999 was a huge year for emo bands.
Yep.
Putting out stellar stuff. So I also include Re-Emergency by the Promise Ring, but also the unauthorized biography of Reinhold Messner by Ben Folds 5, and The Man Who by Travis.
Yes.
Oh, forgot about that one.
I missed that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Watching bridges burn, your driftwood floating underwater, breaking into pieces, just driftwood, hollow and of no use. Waterfalls will find you, bite you, grind you. Nobody is an island, everyone has to go.
And you know what? David Haverland, who just joined us, he said 99 was a great year for emo with Jimmy Eat World, Dismemberment Plan. I don't know if Dismemberment Plan is emo, though. I don't think they are.
They're grouped in with it.
Okay.
You know, they're more like that post-hardcore kind of glitchy, fun sort of band.
He mentioned Something to Write Home About, Re-Emergence. He also said Raina Maria, Look Now Again. Look Again.
Yes.
And then Sunday Real Estate's live album came out this year.
Yeah.
And so other favorites that haven't been mentioned, Beck's Midnight Vultures, Mission Control by Burning Airlines, New World Record by the Poster Children, Magnetic Field's 69 Love Songs, Pingback's self-titled debut, Superchunk's Come Pick Me Up. He said, I was disappointed by 7 More Minutes by the Rentals, and initially was by Between the Bridges by Sloan, but have come to really love that album. Okay, those are some good mentions right there. Some of those might come up again. Joe, why don't you give us some of your stood the test of time albums from 99?
Well, the first one is Jimmy Eat World's Clarity. Clearly, if you ask any Jimmy Eat World fan what their favorite album is, 9 out of 10 of them are going to tell you it's that record.
Yep.
That is correct.
So and even if I don't necessarily feel that way myself, but it's pretty close. That's an album that's definitely stood the test of time. Blink-182's Enema of the State, probably their biggest album, still, with all the hits. It was the first album with Travis Barker. One that's kind of more of a hidden gem, but still works for me, Guster's Lost and Gone Forever. That was kind of like their big breakthrough album. They were third record, but it was the one that really put them on the map. I think it was their second album with Warner Brothers, but it was the one that really brought them to the public attention. So,
all right, good picks. Jay, what do you got?
I'll go with the albums that I revisited that I really felt were not dated anyway. Basically, if you listen to them now, you wouldn't know when they were from. So I think Chris Cornell's Euphoria Morning holds up really well. I think Fiona Apple's When the Pawn holds up well. Wilco Summer Teeth, probably the last Wilco album I liked. Buck Cherry's first record holds up pretty well. And one of my personal favorites, the Helicopters' Grande Rock.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely agree with some of those. Wilco's Summer Teeth I agree with. I think that album starts what would actually be a very good indicator of where their sound would start to, take off from and where they would kind of expand and experiment more. I don't think it's... I think, Jay, if you checked out maybe like Star Wars or Wilco the album, you'd probably find some things that you'd like that are similar to that album. I wanted to mention the Soft Bulletin by the Flaming Lips, because not only do I feel like that's their best record, but like I kind of feel like it's in the same class as another record that came out this year, Blur's 13, where a band took a lot of chances and experimented and made some interesting music that's a little bit more experimental than what they were known for. But Joe, I heard some consternation. Do you not agree that it's to the test of time?
No, I do. That was an agreement.
Oh, okay.
Definitely. So
I thought that was a All right.
I don't
never
know.
mind.
That was totally an agreement. Yeah, yep.
And then the other one was Matthew Sweet's In Reverse. I kind of feel like that might be the last Matthew Sweet record I really got into. And stuff in the 2000s has been good, but that's probably the last one I really dug. And it's also his, I guess, biggest record in terms of production. So let's check out what the commenters said in terms of some of their picks. Andy in Florida said, for me, I was digging Fountains of Wayne, Utopia Parkway, Shades Apart, Eyewitness, Owsley's debut, Matthew Sweet's In Reverse, Jason Faulkner's Can You Still Feel, Guster's Lost and Gone Forever, Foo Fighters' There's Nothing Left to Lose, and Vertical Horizon's Everything You Want.
That's a great record.
That is a great record. That should have been probably in my time. And it does still hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
I just saw, well, God, I think it was almost 3 years ago now. But I saw, it was a kind of like a 90s triple bill. So it was Vertical Horizon, Tonic, and God, I'm going to forget who the third band is. But the Matt Scanlon from Vertical Horizon, pretty much just him, the only guy in the band now. But he was playing all those songs, and they still held up live, still sounded amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Jay, but I realized this is the year where I kind of gave up on like the radio and MTV, I think.
Oh, yeah. You weren't the only one.
Yeah. Well, I think this for me was also because of that. I just had other ways to find music, I guess.
Right.
Between Napster and I don't know what else, but it seemed like there was also a bit of a energy around rock and roll again, and there were some new things going on, and that did not work for radio at all. So yeah, I'm with you. This was closing that chapter for me.
I think honestly for me, one of the big things, and we'll get into it in some of my picks later, was I moved to Columbus. There was a Virgin Megastore here, and it had tons of import music magazines from the UK. So I was buying New Music Express, Q, anything that was in there, I was more interested in checking out than what was on local radio, or I completely was ignoring MTV at this point. I had completely lost interest, and I was like a band like Vertical Horizon, I would maybe hear them and just like turn the channel on the radio, or I'd be playing like a CD and never really listen to anything that was happening, because I was totally enamored with like the post Britpop bands that were happening, which a lot of them, Travis was mentioned, that was one of them. I loved the Man Who, and that might come up later for me. Other bands like Stereophonics and Manson.
Yes.
Yeah. because this was peak CD year,
Right.
You know, because I don't think there were any records that came out in 2000 that sold more than anything that was released in '99, and you know, yeah, it was the year that Napster, you know. I mean, truth to be told, the thing about Napster for me was I thought it was like a great supplement to finding stuff that you couldn't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
But But then when it's embraced by people that are very passive music fans, then the music industry went, you know, crazy, because it's like, this is killing our industry. And, you know, Lars Ulrich had a lot of true statements to say, whether you liked Metallica or liked him or hated him at the time. And it's just like, this was a very pivotal turning point. But I totally hear you about MTV and regular radio not really speaking to you anymore. Is like, you know, they had essentially turned their back on Pearl Jam and were embracing Matchbox 20 by this point.
Right.
And also they embraced Creed, and rap rock was so big. You know, it was all about, the industry was, we just want to sink our money into records that are going to be huge hits. We don't care about developing artists over a course of a few records. They need to make a big hit with one or two records, and that's it.
Right. This is the year of Crazy Town and that kind of stuff. And
but I want to emphasize though, Eric, you just made a great point in that there was convergence that happened, right? You had Napster coming up, and then you had the peak of CD sales, and basically radio becoming irrelevant, all within the same, 24 months it seemed. Which here we are. Was sort of the collapse of the modern record industry.
This was also peak MTV in terms of pop music. Yeah. I mean, this is Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys,
Total Request Live,
TRL. Yes. So they're buzzing with tons and tons of record sales based off of videos by teen bands and pop bands and manufactured bands and that kind of stuff. Then you also had the Spice Girls. In the UK, you had S Club 7. You had Robbie Williams. I mean, this was peak as far as all that stuff goes. So
yeah, I mean, I saw it firsthand. I mean, I worked at Best Buy. That
I was going to mention Best Buy too.
Yeah. Because we sold so many copies of NSYNC Celebrity. Yeah.
Same thing. I was working in a music store, and that was the last, maybe that in 2000 were the last years that we would sell 300, 400, 500 copies of an album in a week, and that was the last time that ever happened.
Right.
You were lucky. After that, you were lucky if you maybe sold 100 copies or something, and that would have to be something like an Eminem release or some major artist, and they were few and far between after that.
Yeah, because I saw so many teenagers come in with their parents, and they liked that song "Fly" by Sugar Ray, or "Answer the Phone," or "Every Morning," and they would have to buy the entire CD to get those songs. And so the music industry moguls that made millions for decades, essentially ripping off fans, they get all bitter and appear in these documentaries talking about how nobody buys records anymore. And it's like, well, you were shortchanging fans for so many years by forcing them to, not making a single available.
Right.
Instead, you force them to buy the album. And, Napster gave people the chance to say, like, hey, I only want 2 songs by Sugar Ray, not 27, by buying, their first record, and then, buying the first record, then Floored, and then 1459. So, pivotal changes in the music industry definitely affected, what records came out. But it seems like the records that we're all raving about, some of them were popular, others not. But as far as like the conversation about Santana, Matchbox 20, Creed, all that stuff is just kind of it didn't make much of an impact to us then. It sold a lot of copies to a lot of people, but as far as the long-term impact, it's not really there for us. I think that's a safe thing to say.
Yeah.
And so many of those bands are, I mean, I'm thinking right now, racking my brain, but have disappeared. I mean, Creed is gone.
Yeah.
20's pretty much, I don't know what happened to them. I mean, they rose to arena level within a couple years, and now when you go through a lot of those bands that were so heavy on MTV and the radio, they're just non-existent.
Yeah. And that was like the last time, too, where albums were going like 3, 4, 5 singles deep. You know, you look back at some of these I'm like looking in my notes and like looking at some of the albums that were bigger sellers, and they, you know, even like Sugar Ray, 1459, 3 major hits, radio hit singles off that album.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you just wouldn't have that again after this. You know, you might get, I remember like Lady Gaga or maybe Kings of Leon, you know, would
Katy
have
Perry.
that, but you know, Katy Perry, but you just wouldn't see it as much. You know, it wouldn't be like every other band. It would be 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 30 that maybe would do that.
Right. Jay, let's get to some other comments over at Patreon. Do you have that up?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a movement around STP's number 4. I think this is where I checked out on the band, but both Scott Witt and Whitney Beeler both pretty big fans of that record to this day. Where do you guys stand on that?
I'm still a fan. It was, I think a lot of people liked it because it was a harder sound. It was kind of more of a return to the sound of their debut album. So that was why I think a lot of fans came back to that record. But I still like it. But there hasn't been an STP album I haven't liked. So
Church on Sunday is a great tune.
And I don't believe it. Is she really gonna do? And I don't believe it. Is she really gonna do? I'll find a way to someday. I'll find a way to someday. Father's always smoking and your mom's at church on Tuesday and your brother's always drinking and dying. Father's always smoking and your mom's at church on Tuesday.
Like, I remember hearing Drown, and I was like, wait, what? Because they're coming off of Tiny Music, which is more or less like an homage to, like, the Beatles. And I really like that kind of direction that they were going through. But wasn't Scott Weiland, like, didn't he almost die because of heroin addiction between those two records? And so, like, they kind of turned things back when they made
Right.
number 4.
plus you also had Scott's solo album, plus the talk show album came out in between that. So they realized we're better off together than alone, you know, on doing our own thing. So that kind of was another reason why they went back to a different sound. And you still had a little bit of the Tiny Music and stuff like Sour Girl.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But that you know, number 4 still got a lot of great stuff in it, like Alabama. Was it? I can't remember the name of the track now, but it's
Atlanta.
Where is it? Atlanta. That's not Alabama. Atlanta. That's the song I'm thinking of.
That song is incredible.
Incredible. Yeah.
Johnny Hooper over at Patreon said, for my musical taste, 1999 was more subdued than either 98 or 2000, but my notable records for that year were The Flaming Lips Soft Bulletin, Terror Twilight by Pavement, 13 by Blur, Come On and Die Young by Mogwai, his record of the year, Keep It Like a Secret by Built to Spill, his hidden gem, The Sebadoh by Sebadoh,
Oh, nice.
Disappointment, Do the Collapse by Guided by Voices. And he said the best 1999 record you guys have never heard of, Clayton Park by Thrush Hermit.
True. I gotta disagree with Guided by Voices, but then I love that album.
That's the one that really sold me on that band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, though, it was like the first song I heard off that was Things That I Will Keep, and the first time I heard it, is this a Posey song I've never heard before? And that got me to check out the rest of the album, because that tune sounds so much like the Posies. But
yeah,
and we did an episode on that record, and we both liked it, right, Tim?
Yeah.
I know I did.
I think Jay and I, because we are not hardcore Guided by Voices fans, and are also leery of intentional lo-fi recording, that we've always gravitated toward that album, and Isolation Drills is probably front to back probably my favorite Guided by Voices album. But I also like Earthquake Glue and Half Smiles of the Decomposed and those 2000s records with Nate Farley, former guest, playing guitar on those. I just love all those records because they sound good. They have great melodies. Yeah, they're a little bit longer. Yeah, you don't get the little 1.5 minute long tossed off lo-fi recordings like you do on Alien Lane and B1000. But I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with Do the Collapse or Isolation Drills or those records.
I can get why an old school fan might be turned off by it, because it was clearly the most commercial sounding record they'd ever made at that point.
Yeah.
You know, but if that was, say, your introduction to the band, you know, then you have a whole different perspective on the album.
Right. Let's talk about albums that were big or a big deal upon release, but maybe you went back to them recently and thought, this has not stood up well. Or maybe it was a big deal and it never stood up for you. Joe, I'll start with you. What are some that have not stood up?
You know, I'm going to say this. 9 Inch Nails' The Fragile. That was the record that I just like, okay, I don't even know if I ever really have been able to get through that album in its entirety more than a few times, because it's a double album. It's a lot to digest. And that was kind of like my dropping off point for 9 Inch Nails, was that record.
Interesting.
So that's one of them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still some good tracks on it, but it was just like too much. Not that I ever loved them, but definitely a lot of the new metal stuff, like Limp Bizkit's Significant Other or Stain Dysfunction.
Sure.
You know, there were songs on there like, hey, that's kind of a catchy song, but then you try to go back and listen to it now, and you're like, what? I don't understand the appeal anymore.
Is Significant Other the one that has Nookie on it?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's the one.
Nookie, Rearrange, you know, Break
That's-
Stuff.
I'd say that was the record that ruined nu metal, because it had such a promising start with that first Korn record, and then, you know, the Wes Borland is a very inventive guitar player in Limp Bizkit, but then when you have this guy that's, you know, always playing the victim by being an asshole and saying all these like really derogatory things about women, well, I don't blame nu metal for having that bad rap with it. Keep in mind, folks, this was the year of Woodstock '99.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was going to go with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, that Significant Other was a huge record, but as far as like, I don't even think I know it's been reissued on vinyl, but as far as like, you know, is Rolling Stone going to do a retrospective on it? Probably not, you know.
I want to mention one record that's been brought up in the comments, and it's one that I've always had trouble with it, but it hasn't stood up for me, and I don't think any record that this band has put out since then either has stood up. It's the Foo Fighters. There's Nothing Left to Lose. I feel like this is a band that has a couple good singles to every record, but they don't make good records overall. I felt that way basically after The Color and the Shape has been that way for me. I remember hearing Learning to Fly and being like, what is this?
Yeah.
Tim, it's a good thing we live in different states, because, you know, I might have to throw down with that comment that you just made. No, I'm kidding. I mean, it's like, I understand. I would say that Wasting Light, I thought was their last great record, start to finish. Yep. But yeah, there was definitely changes in the fact that you had, you know, Dave Grohl plays almost everything on the first record. Then there's almost a full band for The Color and the Shape. And then you have them trying to forge like a solid lineup for There's Nothing Left to Lose. And, you know, I think I really, really dig There's Nothing Left to Lose. It's just, I didn't mention it earlier because there were so many other records that I think took a little bit more precedence on my list. So, but yeah, that was a huge record at that time, and I'd say it still holds up.
Okay.
I think that's where I started to get saturated with the band. It was just so much. By that point, I just couldn't take anymore, and then I just started rejecting them.
Yeah.
I've got a good one. I think we've talked about this in the past, but live, The Distance to Here.
Oh yes.
Is that
Dolphins Cry?
Dolphins Cry.
That's
You can
on
almost
my
smell
list.
it.
Yeah, that's on my list, and I missed it to say so.
Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah, that's really the only one I had. I mean, that is just such a stinker. A band that had so much promise and was so, I don't know, they had like a credibility that they were maintaining, and then this record came out and it just tanked.
Yeah.
I just remember hearing that song and thinking, everything I had thought about the band had suddenly just been upended. Like my whole perception of them was just completely upside down. I don't think I've ever as quickly turned on a band before than with that record.
Yeah.
I remember when you bought that CD and brought it home, and you were like so mad.
It's like,
Well, I have 2 records to throw into this list.
All right.
I had already put Significant Other down, but and Terror Twilight was mentioned. You see, I liked that record at the time, but it seemed like if you brought it up to hardcore Pavement fans, they hated it, and it was like, why? And it still is the only Pavement record that hasn't received the reissue treatment. It seemed like they saved all the like B-sides and rarities for the Brighten the Corners reissue, because they haven't done that for Terror Twilight. I don't know. It's whatever. But the one record that I remember got a lot of publicity at the time, but I think when longtime fans started to listen to it, they were like, yeah, we hate this. And the band is still asked about it now, and not in a good way. And I'm talking about Risk by Megadeth, because that was a record where I think it was based off an interview that Lars Ulrich gave, where it's like, Megadeth just doesn't want to take any risks with their sound. And so Dave Mustaine took that as, like so many things throughout his career. It's like, what can I do to spite Metallica? Oh, hey, did you know I was fired from that band? Hey, did you know that I formed my own band and we played all of our songs faster? And I'm not as good as a singer as James Hetfield. And so, but yeah, that record, Crush 'Em was big on radio, but who was that record really for? So, those are the ones.
Was that there? I get my start to get my Megadeth history messy here. Was that the most commercial they had done to that point? Well, I remember that they were very much. They had one record that was very much like their Black album, right?
That was
radio singles.
That was Countdown to Extinction, and then they made Youth in Asia, which
Youth in Asia, that's the one.
Yeah, it was spawned some big hits for them. But then when they got to Risk, then it's like, I don't know, guys.
Well, that album was produced by Dan Huff, who was in the band Giant, and he was started out, his roots were in Christian music, Christian bands, and then he and his brother formed the band Giant. They had a few albums, but then he he became a Nashville session guitarist, and very much behind the scenes for Hollywood Records, producing a lot of the Disney stuff, so it was an interesting choice. I mean, he's a great guitar player, but it was a really interesting choice for Mustaine to use him. And as I remember, Mustaine had issues where I think he was claiming that he would go back in and listen to stuff, and he's like, I didn't play this part, and he was accusing Huff of re-recording some of the guitar parts himself. But
oops.
Giant was that was an AOR band, right?
They had a huge power ballad.
Yep.
Wow.
89.
I'll see you in my dreams.
10 years before this.
Yeah.
Man, I really hope somebody writes a book about power ballads someday. Hi, Tim.
Only somebody on the show knew anything about those.
Yeah. If somebody could explain a drum beat that was falling down the stairs.
I think I know the guy.
Ballad. Power Ballad by Tim Minichi. Check it out.
Thank you, sir. Let's more comments. We got so many comments. We got to get to them. Whitney Bueller, a couple of that have not been brought up. He said the album Part 3, Coping with Insignificance by The Adventures of Jet, Actual Size by Muzzle, Hey Album by Marvelous 3, God Save the Smithereens by The Smithereens, and then he also mentioned Fountains of Wayne, Foo Fighters, Stone Temple Pilot, Shades Apart, Owsley, which have all been mentioned, and then Dovetail Joints 0ZZ1, as they say in Canada.
That's a 2000 record, though.
Is it? I thought it was 99.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Because we've done it for this show, Jay.
Yeah. No, we've done some 2000 records. I mean, it's one of those records that could never release twice. I mean,
it might have had the major label release in 2000, but it might have been. I'm gonna Wikipedia this shit right now because.
Yeah.
Well, it was such a common thing, a band releases, like a lot of bands in England released something in 98, but in America it didn't come out until 99.
99, January 26th, 1999 on Columbia Records.
Well,
Wow,
shit.
I missed that.
Which
Put
is
it on my list.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Also want to mention Eric Peterson, who we always know there's going to be some high energy rock on his list. He mentioned
yeah.
Helicopters. He mentioned the Barbarellas, Queen of the Galaxy, the Coffin Shakers, We Are the Undead, and the Groovy Ghoulies, Fun in the Dark, along with the compilation album Swedish Sins 99. John Seaman also mentioned Marvelous 3. He brought some other ones, some interesting choices. Incubus, Make Yourself. Counting Crows, This Desert Life. He mentioned Chris Cornell J, like you did. Seven Dust's Home. Silverchair's Neon Ballroom. Stained, Dysfunction. Oleander, February Sun. Jimmy's Chicken Shack, Bring Your Own Stereo.
Nice.
Filter's Title of Record, along with, he said, albums I got into later were Jimmy Eat World's Clarity and Fiona Apple's When the Pawn. And he said he still listens to Euphoria Morning and Home by Seven Dust. So I'm not familiar with Jimmy's Chicken Shack. I don't know what that is.
They had two albums. They had like two minor radio hits with each album. That the one he's talking about had a song called "Do Right" was the hit.
Okay.
Yeah, and I only really knew them because I was always looking for Jimmy Eat World CDs,
Exactly.
and they'd be filed right in front of, it'd be like Jimmy's Chicken Shack. What is this?
Incubus is a good call because a lot of people forget that album was actually 99 because it didn't break until 2000. Like all the hits off that album were 2000. And it came out kind of late, I think it was October 99 when it came out, so it came out late in the year. But a lot of people, when I went to was looking up things, I'm like, oh, that was 99 because I was thinking it was a 2000s album too.
Jason Pan said, at the time in high school, was listening to a lot of Californication and Filter's Title of Record, as others have floated. What I came to later when the buying budget got better and I could own my own CDs were things like Something for Kate, Beautiful Sharks. Is it Deuce or Deus? Deus? How do you pronounce that? Anybody know?
I think it's Deuce like Zeus, but with a D. Yeah.
Okay. The Ideal Crash, Gomez, Liquid Skin, Sugar.
Oh yeah.
Sugar Raw. I can't say this word. Agis Brunner. I don't know how you say that. Agigis.
You mean Sigur Rós?
Sigur Rós.
Sugar Rose,
Yes.
but I don't know how to say the album title.
It's the Blue Baby album.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just say that.
He mentions Fiona Apple, Silverchair, and while we're there, whether or not my thing, Muse's Showbiz album was really prominent in my cassette player in my car during university. Still a good play despite wearing its influence on the sleeve before the Muse shtick starting to emerge on subsequent albums. That's an interesting record.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Can I throw in this quick little anecdote?
Sure.
This was around the time that I started working in college radio, KTCU, and this was that post OK Computer time where
Right.
people were waiting so long for brand new Radiohead that one night I played Muscle Museum by Muse from Showbiz, and I got a call, and this woman's like, "Hey, that new Radiohead song is great."
Yeah.
Too long trying to resist it. You just gone and missed it. It's escaped your world. Can you see that I am needed? Begging for so much more than you could ever give. But I don't want you to adore me, don't want you to ignore me when it is.
But yeah, that was a very interesting record because it sounded more like Radiohead, even
It
though
did.
even though the band was like, "No, we like Queen," and it's just like, sorry, bud, when you've got that voice that's just going straight up, and then you start like doing the falsettos with it, it's like people make the correlation to like Jeff Buckley and Tom York, not Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
Right.
Jay, I think you got that CD, right?
Oh yeah.
I
Because you were like, hey, if Radiohead's not going to rock anymore, I'll buy a band that sounds like Radiohead and rocks.
Hell yeah.
I have a promo of it on vinyl that I got. It's on clear vinyl. It's numbered from that I got as a promo from the label back then.
Whoa.
That's pretty cool.
That's got to be worth a few bucks.
Probably, I don't know, but I wouldn't part with it. But I wanted to go back to Sigur Rós for a minute, because that's another one too, where that's a case where the album was originally issued in '99, but didn't really get an American release until 2001.
Ah, okay. Jim
Really?
Lazowski.
That late?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Jim Lazowski says, I would go with Utopia Parkway as a personal favorite and a bona fide pop masterpiece. Others include Fiona Apple, Matthew Sweet, Old 97s, and Primal Scream. That also came up with Ian Wobble, personal favorites of the year. The Fall, Unutterable, Primal Scream, Exterminator. I didn't realize the Exterminator came out in 99, but then I remember that there are the differences in, release years for UK bands. So, let me double check. I believe that no, it did not come out in '99 in the UK. Came out in. Sorry, guys. If you have included Primal Scream in your list, it came out January 31st, 2000. You're 31 days past the '99 deadline.
Ruh-roh.
Y2K had happened without, issue. Because that's a great record, and I would have included it on my list, but it didn't come out in 2000. So sorry, right. Ian and Jim. Ian also had Sizzla, Royal Son of Ethiopia, Underworld's Bayocup Fish, and Eister Zaden Nubentown. Nubauten? Anybody know how?
Oh, you're making some industrial fans really angry right now.
Eisterzenzieden Nubauten.
Eistriben Nubenhausen.
Lieberglatten Globen. Silence is Sexy is the name of the album.
Remember, folks, if you're listening to this and you're on Twitter, it's at Dig Me Out Podcast.
Einstein Nubauten. That's what I'm calling that band. I don't know. I don't know. There's umlauts. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to pronounce that. I can't even believe those are words. So anyway, that's what Ian picked. Who else? There's only a few left here that we haven't mentioned.
Keith Sawyer yet? Seasons change, feelings change.
Oh yes, Keith.
I haven't heard. June and the Exit Wounds. LPs by Dressy Bessie and the Lucksmiths. Damien Gerardo, Rehearsals for Departure. Simon Joyner's The Lousy Dance. Emo Punk Were Defined for Me by No Dice Fire and the City of Automatons. That's one I need to pull out. I haven't listened to that.
That is a great record.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dismemberment Plans, Emergency Nigh. Retro New Wave Comeback. My Favorite Loves at Absolute Zero and the Faint Black Wave Arcade. And that's another record I need to go back and listen to. Top of the list were Old 97's Fight Songs and
great album.
Yeah.
But they don't play any songs from that record anymore. Which is unfortunate, but like songs like Jagged and 19, those are my favorite Old 97's records. And yes, they're from around here. And so anyway.
And Basement Jack's Remedy was the last on this list.
Yeah.
And there was one other one that we didn't mention. That was, was that the last one?
I think that might be the last one.
Okay, thanks everybody at Patreon for those comments and all your suggestions of what you thought were your favorite or what you provided as your favorite records. We need to talk about albums we discovered after they were released, long after. Now, through this show, Jay and I have discovered a ton of albums afterwards. So I'm not going to include the ones that we've done reviews for, although there's been a lot of great records that we have reviewed from this year. But one that I wanted to mention that I discovered many years later is Fu Manchu's Eaten Dust. Because I didn't get into Fu Manchu and stoner desert rock, those kind of sounds, until a couple years later, like 2001, 2002, 2003, in that era. And that has a cover of Godzilla by Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, yeah. Blue Oyster Cult. Yeah.
And it's amazing. And then also has my favorite Fu Manchu song called Mongoose. It's on the back half of that record.
That's on California Crossing.
Is it?
Uh-huh. Because I was so into Fu Manchu around that time. And Mongoose, I'm pretty sure, is on California Crossing.
Well,
the record that they did after.
I'm looking. It says fifth studio album released February 19th, 1999. It was the second album for Brant Bjork and Bob Balk, and who replaced Ruben Romero and Eddie Glass. So I guess it's a sort of a compilation, because the first 3 tracks were originally released as the Godzilla EP, which was a 10-inch on Josh Omi's Man's Ruin Records. And then but it's listed as an album.
Yeah, it was a 10-inch. Yeah, because King of the Road was the record that came out in 2000. Then California Crossing came out in 2001. And California Crossing does have Mongoose on it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but that song "Evil Eye" from the Action Is Go, that song rips.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Unfortunately, not on streaming as of last check. Yeah, but Action is Go. I mean, you can find it on YouTube, or you find it at used CD.
Yeah.
But Fu Manchu's like one of those, like, they're still going, and they still, like, they are consistent.
Yep.
With what they do.
The other one that I wanted to mention that I didn't get until long after it came out, because I was kind of not listening to this artist, even though I got back into him years later. It's Prince's Raven to the Joy Fantastic. I sort of checked out with Prince in the mid-90s, and then didn't really get back into listening to any of the records probably until like 3121, which was like mid-2000s.
Yeah.
So I was happy to go back, and I just enjoy everything that he does. So there's even the weird jazz jam instrumental albums that he puts out on his own label for his fan club. I like to listen to that weird stuff too. So those are a couple that I discovered and listened to long after they came out. Eric, what about you? What were some records that you didn't get to when they came out?
I'll just quickly go over a couple and then discuss one in particular. For me, Wilco Summer Teeth. For some reason, I kind of slept on that, even though I was a big fan of being there. But I kind of backtracked when Yankee Hotel Foxtrot had that all that traction, and I realized, wow, this whole record is amazing, and it's an important record in their story, because they were attempting to make something as pop friendly as possible, and Reprise just totally dropped the ball on promoting it. So when they did Yankee Hotel Foxtrot the way that they wanted it to, they're all like, well, we need a single and we need to remix it. And it's like, this is the record, take it or leave it. Another one, Tom Waits, Mule Variations. That was a surprise comeback, because I don't think he had put out a record since Bone Machine. And I was listening to it again, and it's got the weird avant-garde stuff that Tom Waits is best known for, but also probably some of his best ballads in decades. Take It With Me is just such a powerful song. Another one, Built to Spill, Keep It Like a Secret. I got into that band more with the live record, and I backtrack and realize, man, the guitar playing on this is incredible. And so that's a record that's held up really well. But the one record, and this has not been discussed yet, American Football's first LP. Now here's the thing about American Football. That record was a great record when it came out. And there was a small group of people in the emo scene that embraced it. But if you had 10 Get Up Kids fans, you had 1 or 2 American Football fans. And this was a band that they recorded it knowing that they were going to break up. And so it has like this very specific kind of emo sound. But it's like if you're only going to listen to 10 emo records that entire year, that could easily get lost in the pile. And it got lost in the pile for me. But that's a record I've come back to, actually thanks to their second record that came out a few years ago, and realized, hey, this record is pretty fantastic.
Joe, I heard you.
Yes, American Football was like on my list too. That was the record. totally slipped past me initially. I didn't even find out about it until it was a reissue, a couple years ago? A year or two ago? And that was when I finally, there was like a buzz about it. I'm like, who is this band? Why have I never heard of them before? So that was one I definitely got into. A couple of the other ones I have weren't like necessarily years after, maybe only a couple of years after, Sigur Rós being one of them. Feeder's second album, Yesterday Went Too Soon. I had the debut album, really liked that, but then neither their second or their third album got released in the U.S., so I didn't even know they had those out until their fourth album came out, and then I liked that, and I'm like, wait, they did 2 albums in between this? How did I not know? But that was one I really enjoyed a lot. And Tom Petty's Echo. I kind of checked out on Tom Petty, and I remember getting the promo for that, never even listening to it until like years and years later. And believe it or not, when I actually got around to digging it out was when you guys did the Tom Petty in the 90s special. And then I'm like, damn, there's some good stuff on this. I'm going to have to, and really gave that record another evaluation and realized there's some decent stuff on this that I completely missed out on.
It said I need a little money. I know I can count on you. After that night in Vegas and the hell that we went through, we went down, swinging like Benny Goodman. Yeah, we went down, swinging. Yes, we did.
Jay, what did you sleep on that you finally came around to discovering?
I'll give you a couple of hard rockers. So one would be a band called Badlands. So I love their first 2 records, and they're kind of a troubled story, and where this last record came out right after the singer died. It was only released in Japan, I think, in '99. So it was available, but you had to be a hyper fan. At this point, I kind of lost track of the band. So years later, it was finally released in the U.S., and if you like, 70s style rock that's all performance, I mean, just amazing performances. It's another great record by this band, and the last one they ever made. The other one is a band called New American Shames. We saw them live. I don't remember where, why, and I remember getting the CD. I might have got a free, like a cheap advance copy or something, and thought like it was nothing spectacular. But years later, it would come up in just random mixes, and it's just a really good like AC/DC style rock album with a really strong singer too. Super hooky, just awesome simple guitar riffs that just rock. It really holds up well. The only album they ever made, but that's one that I'll go back to maybe every 6 months as kind of like a palate cleanser when I just need to crank something and kind of reset and let off some energy.
I remember that record coming out, and you described it as sort of AC/DC-ish. I would have had no idea until you said what that sounded like.
It was forgettable for me at the time, but I've gone back and revisited it, and it's actually, I don't know, I think really, really strong. For whatever reason, it just didn't connect in 1999 as well as it does now.
I think they might have opened for Rat.
There you go.
I think we saw Rat at the Newport Music Hall with like 200 people, which the Newport holds like 1,200, so just to give you an idea.
Rat had that trying to be a comeback album in 1999, so
they did.
That's right.
Along with Great White and half a dozen other bandsmen.
Dokken had an album, yeah.
Dokken.
Thanks,
they were all on
International.
No, they were all on. John Kolodner had revived Portrait Records, and they were all on that.
Okay.
Yes, this was the era of like Metal Sludge. The website was taking off.
Oh yeah.
So all these bands would be talked about there. So there was definitely like a little weird community of people that were listening to all this stuff, even though it was basically underground music at this point.
Right.
Except for one band that was trying to bring it all back. That was Buck Cherry, which we also saw.
Yes. There's a lot of good rock and roll re-emerging, just straight up hard rock.
It does see that it seemed like both in the U.S. and then overseas, with some of the action rock or high energy rock with the Helicopters and Backyard Babies and
Hardcore Superstar and
yeah,
Lucifer.
there was this sort of return to like I don't know, Detroit Stooges kind of high energy rock that had been absent for. Or
Well, this, I mean, you had the White Stripes are starting to happen, and
yep,
the Go, and what was that other Detroit band that had a hit for a second? I can't remember their name.
The Von
Yeah, there was a
Bondies?
lot. Yes.
yeah, that'd come in like a year or two, I think.
Yeah. But this is when it's all starting. It's,
Yep.
that scene is building.
Oh yeah. So let's talk about maybe some, these are some lesser known bands. What are some buried treasures or lesser known albums that they might have even been by bigger bands, but they're just, for some reason, this album didn't take off, or maybe they're smaller bands that, just didn't catch on. There might have been UK bands that didn't catch on in the United States, or vice versa. Some albums that are hidden gems, you think, from 1999. Eric, I'll start with you.
I got to go with Ignorance is Bliss by Face to Face. Face to Face at that point was known as a pop punk band, and they broke up after that self-titled record. It's not a very well-known story, but it is true. They broke up. They got rid of their drummer, longtime drummer, the founding member, the last other founding member other than Trevor Keith, and they decided to regroup. They wanted to do something different, and they were very much influenced by bands that they also really liked. I mean, of course, they liked the Descendants and Bad Religion, but they decided to use more of influences by The Cure and Fugazi, and they made this record that I loved when it came out, and I still love it. The only thing is, when you have such a defined pop punk sound, that pop punk audience is not going to dig something noticeably different. And, I remember seeing Face to Face play a lot of those songs at Liberty Lunch, and I could tell that there was a shift in the crowd's enthusiasm. And they played like 5 or 6 songs from a record that wasn't even out yet. The new drummer, Pete Parada, who now plays with The Offspring. And it's a record that they still speak highly of, but as far as them playing songs from it, it rarely happens. But it's just a great record if you are a fan of energetic, discordy, weird rock music for a pop punk band to do it. So highly, highly recommend that one. The other one I have on my list was very popular in England, but this band has never really had a big foothold in America. And it's the Stereophonics, their second record, Performance and Cocktails.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I really kind of dismissed that band when word gets around. Their first album came out, because it was like, Traffic is not a great introduction song to them, but it was released as their first single. It seemed like very Oasis light. But when at the radio station I worked at, we got a sampler in conjunction with Performance and Cocktails, and it had songs from Word Gets Around as well as Performance and Cocktails. I was like, wow, this band is incredible. And so many great songs on both of those records. And really after that, I have not much interest in that band. They decided to become more like a jammy Black Crowes kind of band.
Well, for like 2 records, and
Well,
then they
that's
turned into a pop band, and
Well,
Yeah.
Jimmy the Black Crowes is a connection. They had the Black Crowes
Steve
drummer
Gorman
was playing with them. So
Yeah.
They fired Stuart Cable, and they got Steve Gorman to play with them. But Performance and Cocktails just hit after
was a
hit
great
after
album.
hit.
yeah, Hurry Up and Wait, Pick a Part That's New. Love it.
Mhm.
And I also Face to Face, The Devil You Know. Love that song.
Yeah, it was on
yeah.
Buffy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of funny stories about what happened with that band around that time, because like only a year later they put out another record that was much more in line with what they were known for. And as I said, they rarely play any songs from that record. I've been fortunate to have seen them play some of those songs before, since the record came out, they did an acoustic tour where they played that record start to finish, and Scott Shiflett, the bass player, played all the lead guitar lines, and then Pete Parada made a surprise appearance when they played in Dallas a few years ago. He was on tour with The Offspring, and so he came on out and played Overcome as the encore, and that blew my mind. So, but yeah, it's an underappreciated record, but there have always been face-to-face fans that get it, but so many other face-to-face fans just don't want to have anything to do with it. They want to listen to Don't Turn Away, which I get, but you have to be a little bit more open-minded about what to expect from face-to-face with listening to that record.
Joe, what other hidden gems do you have from 1999?
Stereophonics was on my list too. Sloan's Between the Bridges, which was mentioned in the Patreon comments. I would agree with the listener too that when I first heard that album, I wasn't as crazy about it, but it's really grown on me over the years. Oh shoot, I just lost my place here. Doyle Bramhall 2's Jelly Cream album. It was his second solo album. His first solo album was produced by Wendy and Lisa, so it was this weird kind of mix of a little bit of R&B stuff, but this one was like straight up like blues rock album, and kind of like the direction he progressed from there, but I still love that album today. Cool as Shakers' second album, Peasants, Pigs, and Astronauts. Kind of more of a concept album. Their first album was very different from it, and Bob Ezrin produced it. It had a weird history. Like, they originally brought John Leckie in to work on the demos, and then they moved on to, they were going to use Rick Rubin and George Strakakis, and then they eventually got rid of them and ended up with Bob Ezrin as a producer. It's an odd little record, but I still really enjoy it. It's something that totally got passed by in its time. And Folk Implosions, One
Part Lullaby?
Yes, One Part Lullaby. Thank you. That's another favorite of mine from that era that often gets forgotten about, especially because there was a Sebadoh album the same year.
Yes. Jay, what are your hidden gems from 99?
Black Halos, the Black Halos first record. So pretty much a punk band, but great hooks. Singer has a very unique vocal, kind of like New York Dolls-ish. Saw them live at the time, and really great performance, and still a record that holds up really well. One that I don't know if it's consistent all the way through, but I think it's an interesting record to go check out if you can find it, is Cobra Verde's Nightlife. So this is an Ohio-based band, some connections to Guided by Voices. It's a little bit like 70s glammy, at times T-Rex here and there, but it's still kind of alternative, really well produced, kind of an interesting band to check out. The Frames Dance the Devil, so he would go on to be what's the guy's name?
Glenn Hansard.
Yeah.
Glenn Hansard, yeah.
So it's kind of pre him having some popularity. So their second record still holds up pretty well. Sheila Divine. So we did a whole episode on Parade, and I still love that record. I think it's their best.
I completely forgot that came out in '99.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great, sharp, well-written, well-performed. Production's good. Just all around, I still enjoy that record quite a bit.
Do you still hum along to it?
I do.
Hi, Aaron.
Yeah.
They're trying to get a vinyl reissue of that made.
I know. I've been bugging him literally for like 5 years.
So I'll
probably
be
sick
quite
of it.
excited if that happens. So
One that I wanted to mention for a hidden gem, only because I feel like this is probably an album that doesn't get mentioned because their 90s output is so strong, and I really liked this record. It's just, maybe it's not as good as the other ones, is Suede, or London Suede's Head Music. This is actually the album I discovered them on. I didn't listen to the band when it Coming Up had come out, or Dogman Star, or the first record. So I discovered them on this because of the NME, because of going to the Virgin Megastore, and really liked the single Electricity, really liked most of the record. I don't like the title track. That song rubs me the wrong way. But the rest of the album I think is really good, and it made me go back and get all the other records, and I really love that band after checking out that record. I also feel like you sort of missed it or mismentioned it, but the Black Crowes record that came out this year is pretty good. By Your Side. I feel like it's better than the Three Snakes and a Charm record that came out prior to this. Kind of a return of their more rockin' sound.
I forgot about that record.
yeah, I would agree with that, Tim.
Go Faster is on that record.
Yeah.
Probably the last one. I mean, Lions is pretty good, but after that, I sort of completely. I know they had a couple more records, but I lost track of all that after that record. And we've done a lot of.
I think that was the record that was supposed to be like the last big push, where they had like, okay, we're gonna try to have another hit record. I think after that, they just kind of settled into their live band thing and just did their own course.
And we've done a lot of albums that would fall under hidden gems for reviews, like Spider Bait's Grand Slam, and Sparkle Horse's Good Morning Spider, and Blue Bottle Kisses Patient, just to name a few. But let's get to what we're all here for, our favorite albums with some runners-up for 1999. Joe, I'm going to start with you for this section.
Oh, God, don't start with me. I have to add Travis onto the list because I completely forgot about that, and that would definitely make in my top albums of the year. I can't believe I actually forgot that. This one may not be a super popular choice, but it's a record I still listen to a lot. Third Eye Blind's Blue.
Oh, okay.
Still enjoy that record quite a bit. It's interesting that most of the hits off it were really pop songy, but it's more experimental stuff on the album I like, especially if you can get like the non-American version that has the full-length lyric version of Slow Motion. Got to have that version. Like the one that got neutered on the actual album that got released is no good. This came up kind of in the pre-show. Our Lady Peace is Happiness is Not a Fish You Can Catch. Love that record. Jay was listening to a piece of it before we recorded the show, and that's actually one of my favorite albums by the band. And I would also add Sheila Divine to my list too, now that I realize that came out in 1999. So that's got to be on there as well.
All right. Eric, give us some of your favorites and your favorite.
Let me go with the runners up first.
Okay, rattle them off.
Enema of the State by Blink-182. Despite its toilet humor and, kind of goofiness, and especially the songs like, What's My Age Again, the production is still fantastic. The songs are still wonderful. Travis Barker really made that band much more special than Scott Raynor could ever do. Scott Raynor was a good, fast drummer, but Travis Barker he's on a completely different level. And you would have never thought that, the guy that plays on the second Aquabats record, he's going to, change Blink-182 for the better. But he did. Other runner-up, The Promised Rings, Very Emergency. This was a band that started off as like a real fast pop-punk-like emo band. And this was like the closest thing that they ever did to making a pop record. Just 10 songs, boom, boom, boom. Not a bad song in the mix. And, and Promise Ring, just one of the most crucial emo bands around that time. And that leads me to, this is one of my all-time favorite records, period. I mean, it's in just for me, this is on par with Pet Sounds, Don't Turn Away, as far as like meaning to me, and that is Jimmy Eat World's Clarity. I know y'all did an entire episode devoted to Clarity, but to just kind of sum it all up is like, this was a band that they were on a major label. This was their third record, and the major label just really left them alone. And so they spent 60 days in the studio experimenting with all sorts of ideas, and they in turn created this absolute masterpiece. Still one of the best drum sounds I've ever heard. And I was fortunate to tell the drummer Zach Lynn that, and he was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, just there's something about the drumming on that, the way it sounds, just everything about it. It's like you have the big long songs, you have the short concise songs, but every single one is a winner." And yes, I can listen to Goodbye Sky Harbor, all 16 minutes of it, and not want to skip to the next song, skip back to the first song. But yeah, Clarity is tops for me.
I knew that was coming. If you had said what album, I would have placed a large sum of money on you picking that record. I just had a feeling.
Yeah, you know I like emo.
I knew it. We've been doing this a long time together. I think I've got a few things figured out. A few things, not all, just a few. Jay, favorite album and some runners up from 1999.
I mean, favorite. What does that mean? There's so many. I guess revisiting this year, I realized how important a year this was for me for whatever reason. I just was really engaged in music at this point in my life, and so many different kinds of music, and there was a lot of stuff I liked from this year. But that said, I think the three that made the biggest impact would be I'll go with Sheila Divine. I'll go with Muse Showbiz. And the one that really blew my mind and I still just love to this day is the Helicopters Grande Rock. So, you get punk, you get classic rock, you get dueling guitar solos, you get pure energy, you get some electric piano. It sort of it has a vintage kind of like Kiss feel to it, like the early Kiss records. It has so much going on, and overall, it's just fun. I think it was one of those records as we got to the later part of the decade, and where it was just it was a hard rock record that was fun again, and it kind of found its place without being like 80s metal, pop metal silliness. This was a whole other kind of way to express fun, higher energy rock and roll. So this was a big record for me, and I still really love it.
I agree with you. This is a really hard year. I didn't realize how much music I loved from this year. I am, however, surprised that there are some albums that you did not mention that I thought for sure you were going to mention.
All right. Maybe I missed them. What did I miss?
The self-titled album by Supergrass.
Okay.
Blink of the Stars, August Everywhere.
That's a good one.
Pretty Mighty Mighty's Famous Past Lives.
Oh, are you going to play that card on me?
I'm going to play that card on you. Well, we did spend an episode talking about it. Now, that's a really obscure record for most people because it's a Columbus, Ohio release. Came out at a small indie label. Yeah, you can, dig it up somewhere, but it's not even, I don't think it's streaming even. I think, well, maybe Neil got it, the drummer who I recently talked to, maybe he got it up. That's probably tied. It's so hard. I mean, I love the Helicopters record. That's my introduction to the band there. The Blink of the Star record is amazing. I love the Burning Airlines record from this year, the Fiona Apple record. I mean, Jesus. But the one that I've gone to more over the years than anything is the Pretty Mighty Mighty album. So, and I love the Sheila Divine record too. Saw them multiple times.
More than Summer Teeth?
Yeah. That's not my favorite Wilco record.
I mean, you were all up in Wilco at this time.
I know I was. Now if you ask me to rank Wilco records, that'd probably be middle of the pack.
Okay.
So, and don't ask me to start ranking Wilco records because we'll be here for, a good 2 hours as I try to place everything and debate myself. So, and I like The Man Who by Travis. That was a pivotal album, and Dovetail Joints record and Guided by Voices. I mean, Jesus, there's a lot of records that were really good. One that wasn't, Paul Westerberg's Suicaine Gratification. I'm so disappointed in that record. I still am to this day. I bought like the like special like limited edition, like they had it wasn't just a CD, like it was a special digipack thing, or
there was a booklet.
Yeah,
it came out the same day as Clarity. So guess which one I've listened to more?
Yeah. That was I would agree with the Westberg one. That was kind of a disappointment for me too. As was you mentioned the self-titled Supergrass album coming after In It for the Money. That was a big disappointment for me because that record was so good. I love that album so much. And
I think they're equal.
The self-titled one was like, this just isn't as good.
Oh, I love Moving, and there's so many good Pumping on Your Stereo.
Yeah, I've come back to appreciate it more, but at the time I was disappointed in it.
I gotcha. But I gotta say, so many of our listeners over the years have suggested records that, I would never have listened to. The Sparkle Host record. We played with Ultimate Fake Book. I can't say that one. Spider Bait, Blue Bottle Kiss, Llama Farmers. That was another good one from '99 that we reviewed many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. So, hey, if you've listened to this episode and you thought, you idiots forgot a really great album that came out in 1999, tell us so in the comments over at Facebook, tweet us, or if you're one of our patrons over at Patreon, feel free to bring up an album that was forgotten that we should have talked about or our commenters should have brought up, and continue the conversation on the albums of 1999. Sorry, I got a little cough there.
Getting emotional?
I'm getting emotional about this here, Jay. Eric?
Yes?
Tell people what you're up to right now. Where can they find you on the internets?
Definitely check out my website, themeparkexperience.com. I still technically do a podcast, but I haven't done an episode in like 6 or 7 months. I'm hoping to do a few episodes this year. You can check out my band, Cave Mountains, cavemountains.bandcamp.com. We put out our first record last year, and this year we're planning on recording a new album. And so that's essentially what I've been doing, and of course still writing for the Dallas Observer and working on another book, and this is going to be my second book about emo. I can't escape the genre. I just love it so much.
And it loves you back.
Yeah, and it's not sad.
Joe, what's up on your end?
Well, you can still find me at Sit and Spin with Joe at Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, although my show has also been on a bit of a hiatus lately just because raising a toddler has proven to be really time-consuming at the age he's at right now, which is 3. Other than that, though, I just started doing a new Sidecast podcast episode with a couple friends of mine, Eric Miller from the Pods and Sods Network and John Lamour of the Hustle Podcast. We're doing a show called Soundtrack Six Pack, where we each pick 2 of our favorite songs from soundtracks and just kind of highlight those. We just recorded like our 4th episode the other day, so we've had 2 that have come out so far.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of a record I forgot that I was going to mention was the Magnolia soundtrack that Amy Mann did. It's pretty strong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Way to go to remember that now.
Well, he said soundtracks, and
Yeah. That was actually one of the songs from that album came up in the last episode we recorded.
See?
There you go. Synergy. Patreon is the place to go to become part of the Dig Me Out Union, support the podcast, vote in polls, pick our roundtables, our 80s episodes. Dig Me Out podcast is your place for the 90s and beyond. I just made that up. I just created that tagline there. Trademark. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving us some positive feedback over at iTunes. So that's it. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Thanks for listening. To support the podcast, visit www.patreon.com/digmeout and become a monthly subscriber at www.digmeoutpodcast.com, where you can find links to our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, as well as our merchandise store at Zazzle.com.
Fast as you can, baby, run free yourself.